We're continuing our study of trig equations. This is the third day, and this is the day when we're going to find approximate answers, meaning we're going to evaluate them in our calculators, not at the, quote, good unit circle spots. The steps still stay the same. We are going to follow the general pattern of isolate the trig function, apply the inverse, and isolate theta, which is what we did last time. But when we apply the inverse now, we're going to apply that by typing in inverse sine into our calculator or inverse cosine or whatever the case is. So let's start with this first example. Notice the answers we're looking for are the ones between 0 and 360 degrees, and we're going to round to the nearest hundredth, so 2 decimal places. All right, so step 1 is actually done for us. We have isolated, or we were given an isolated trig function. So now my next step is to figure out where does the sine equal negative 0.06. All right, so I'm going to use my calculator for that. Watch your mode. My mode is in radians. I need it to be in degrees. And I want to do the inverse sine of negative 0.06. Second sine of negative 0.06. And I get negative 3.4398 degrees. All right, makes sense. Sine being a negative small value, that's just a little bit below the axis. So this makes sense. Negative 3.4398. Okay, now that's good, but remember that sine and cosine, they equal certain values at multiple places. So if I think about my unit circle, what the calculator has told me so far is at negative 3.4-ish degrees, all right, a little bit smaller than that, but for the picture's sake, this angle right here has a y value or a sine of negative 0.06. That's also going to be true at the other place with the same height, which would be over here. Now, remember when we're looking for all possible answers, we need to include all revolutions around the circle, like that for this version of the answer. And I also need to figure out how many degrees this one is. And it doesn't matter whether I'd go negative or positive. What I do know is that it is 3.4398 degrees beyond 180 in the positive direction. So I'm going to set up my other version to be 183.4398 plus, I forgot my n on the other expression, plus 360n. Okay, so make sure you understand why negative 3.4-ish and 183.4 are the two locations I'm looking for, and why the plus 360n is there. Now on this one, the only thing I need to do is divide by 2 and get my answers. So I'm going to divide everything by 2 in both cases. I'm going to take the number I got on my calculator and divide that by 2. That gives me negative 1 point. At this point, I can go to 2 decimal places. I just wanted to make sure earlier. Negative 1.72. Sorry. Negative 1.72 plus 180n equals theta. And over here, if I divide 183.4, I'm going to get 91.72 plus 180n equals theta. Okay, so this is a little awkward because I'm switching back and forth with my calculator, but the values of n that are going to give me values between 0 and 360. That's what I'm looking for now. On this one on the left, negative 1.72, I'm not going to let n be 0 because that would give me negative 1.72. I need to go ahead and add 180 to that one time. Maybe more than that in the long run, but if I add 180 to that one time, I'm going to get, let me just make sure here, negative 1.72. If I add 180, my first answer should be 178.28. And I can actually add 180 again and still be within my guidelines. So there's my first two answers, 178.28 and 358.28. And then I need to see what answers I get from my right-hand side. 91.72 is one of them, because that would just be when n is 0. I can add 180 one time, and that should give me, let's see, 90 and 180 is 270, so that should be 271.72. So kind of have to mess around with the n values and see which ones give you answers in the designated domain. And remember that all of those are answers to this question, solutions to this equation, so you could sub them all in and make sure that they give you a true statement. Okay, so let's move on to one in radians. Solve your equation for 0 to 2 pi, round to the nearest 100th. All right, so in this case, we've done equations like this before. It's just, again, we're going to use the calculator now to apply the inverse. If I subtract 4 from both sides of the equation, 3.28 minus 4 is going to be negative 0.72. And then I'm going to apply my inverse. I need the inverse cosine of negative 0.72. And I need to be in radians. Inverse cosine of negative 0.72 gives me 2.374. Now, with cosine, you're always safe just doing plus or minus that number. So plus or minus 2.374. Actually, I'm going to go 2.3746. Go ahead and separate them into two separate equations. I could have said that negative version in a couple ways. So let's see, 2.3 radians. That's going to be somewhere over here. And then negative 2.3 would be there. I could have used the positive version over here, but to me it's easier to just use the plus version and the minus version, because that negative just goes that way. And we're going to do this plus 2 pi n thing anyway, so it doesn't matter what name you call it. I need to squeeze in here plus 2 pi n, plus 2 pi n. All right, because any amount of revolutions around the circle will get us back to the same location. Okay, so now I need to subtract pi from both sides of this equation. And pi is a like term with the 2.37. Seems like it might go with the 2 pi n, but that n makes it not a like term. So what I need to know is what is 2.37, this number in my calculator, minus pi. If I take that answer and subtract pi, negative 0.767 plus 2 pi n. And then if I divide everything by 3, I get negative 0.25, I'm going to go negative 0.26. Plus, and now this was going to be, I'm dividing this by 3, 2 pi over 3. times n. And over on the right, I had negative 2.3746. And I need to subtract pi from that number. And then divide that number by 3. I get negative 1 point, let's just go at this point, negative 1.84. Theta equals negative 1.84. And I would have divided the 2 pi n by 3 again. 2 pi over 3 times n. Okay, and again, there's a lot of calc steps, and it's going kind of quickly, but at this point, I'm just going to show you the answer. You could let n be 0 and 1 and 2 and figure out all the results that are less than 2 pi. Turns out that theta is 0.26, 1.84, 2.35, 3.93, 4.44, and 6.03. So we're going to stop. 2 pi would be about, I don't know, 6.3 radians or so. So anything smaller than that for any of these values of n are going to be allowed. All right, so this last one I'm going to kind of change. This program I use does not allow me to do all answers. There's no reason we can't. I think it doesn't want to combine the rounded off values from the calculator with the plus 2 pi n's, but we're okay with that. We did that kind of in our word problems. So let's kind of set this one up quickly and do all answers. That'll save us some time anyway. So the first thing I need to do is get rid of this negative 9 by dividing. And 6 divided by negative 9 is negative 2/3. Negative 2 square root of 3 over 3. This is cosecant, which means that the sine, which is its reciprocal, would be negative 3 over 2 square root of 3, which again, we've seen this happen. We need to rationalize 3 square root of 3 over 6, which is negative square root of 3 over 2. So it looks like this one did happen at a unit circle spot, but we're still going to do the approximate answers anyway. Okay, so in my calculator, I need the inverse sine of negative square root of 3 over 2. And I get negative 1.047. Negative 1.047 plus 2 pi n. And I also get for my other version negative 1.047. Let's see, that's down here. And the sine's going to have the same value over there. So that's going to be 180 plus, or in this case, pi plus 1.047. Which is 4.189. All right, so some good unit circle review in there. Find the two values that have the same sign, the same height. And now we almost are there. We're looking for all answers again. So all we need to do is subtract pi over 4 from each one of these values and then divide everything by 2. All right, so flipping back again. Get rid of that. Okay, so my first one, I'm going to subtract pi over 4 from both sides. The negative 1.047 minus pi over 4. Whoops. Not negative, minus And then the other version is going to be 4.189 minus pi over 4. And then these are the the first one would have been, let's see, 2 theta equals negative 1.83 plus 2 pi n. The second one is 2 theta equals 3.40 plus 2 pi n. And now we cut everything in half. All right, so back on my calculator, the second one cut in half is 1.70 plus pi n. And this first one would have been 4.189, no, negative 1.83. Cut that in half, and we get negative 0.915. Plus pi n. Okay, so again, according to the directions, we changed them to all answers. This is going to be all answers. And that's it. All right, so I apologize for all the flipping back and forth. Hopefully you followed. Make sure you've got them written down. If you have any questions, we can discuss them in class. Gung out.